Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Best English Podcast. I am Sophia, and I am so incredibly happy, so truly thrilled to be here with you today. You know, we've talked a lot on this podcast about different parts of learning English, about grammar, about vocabulary, about understanding accents. But today, we're going to dive into what many of you have told me is the most important part, the biggest goal, the thing that makes all that hard work truly worth it. Today, we're going to talk about how to improve your English speaking fluency, how to learn to speak easily, to make your English flow naturally and confidently. This episode is designed especially for you if you're at an intermediate level, perhaps B1 or B2, aiming to push past those feelings of hesitation and move towards truly natural communication. This isn't just about knowing a lot of words or understanding all the rules of grammar. It's about feeling comfortable, feeling sure of yourself, feeling free, and feeling like you when you speak. It's about having real, meaningful conversations, laughing, sharing your thoughts and feelings, making genuine connections with people, all without constantly worrying about every single word you say. It's about moving from being someone who learns English to someone who speaks English with ease. And that journey, it's truly exciting and deeply rewarding. I've met so many learners from all over the world, from vibrant cities in Asia to the historic towns of Europe, from bustling markets in Africa to the quiet landscapes of South America. They all share a similar story. They tell me, "Sophia, I understand English perfectly. I can read complicated books. I can even write detailed emails for work. I watch movies without subtitles and grasp most of it. But when it comes to speaking, my mind becomes empty. My heart beats fast. My throat feels tight. And I just freeze. The words are there, somewhere, but they just won't come out." Does that sound familiar to you? If it does, please know you are absolutely not alone in feeling this way. This is one of the most common and persistent challenges for English learners. And it's also one of the most satisfying to overcome. The good news? It is absolutely possible, and we're going to explore how today. Today, we're going to break down this big, often intimidating goal of fluency into smaller, more manageable, and much less scary steps. We'll look at the common fears that hold us back, those mental blocks that seem to put a barrier between our thoughts and our spoken words, and how to gently but effectively push past them. We'll talk about how to change your thinking so you can start thinking in English, allowing ideas to form directly in the language rather than going through a tiring translation process in your head. We'll explore the secrets of sounding more natural, not just correct, but truly like a native speaker. Even if you're still an intermediate English learner, we'll discover how to make every single interaction, no matter how brief or informal, a valuable practice opportunity, turning everyday moments into powerful learning experiences. And we'll learn how to embrace and grow from those inevitable little mistakes that are simply part of the learning process. Most importantly, this episode is going to be filled with real-life stories, the true experiences of people just like you who faced these very same challenges and found their own unique, practical, and often surprising ways to speak English easily, naturally, and fluently. These aren't just abstract ideas, they are tried and true methods that have worked for others. So, find a comfy spot, maybe grab your favorite cup of coffee or tea, silence any distractions, and let's begin this incredible journey together towards unlocking your full English speaking potential. One of the biggest mountains to climb when learning to speak English, or any new language, is that deeply ingrained feeling of fear. It's that familiar knot in your stomach, that dryness in your mouth, that sudden tightness in your throat, the overwhelming sensation that makes your mind go completely blank precisely when you need it most. It's the fear of making mistakes, the fear of sounding silly or foolish, the fear of not being understood at all, or even the fear of being judged harshly by others. These are all very real, very human feelings, and they can be so powerful that they stop us from even trying to speak in the first place. You're standing there, the words are forming in your head, perhaps a perfect sentence, but then the what-ifs flood your mind and you just freeze. But here's the crucial secret, something I want you to truly absorb. Everyone experiences these fears. Yes, even native English speakers sometimes feel nervous when they have to speak in public or when they are in an unfamiliar social situation. The goal isn't to never feel fear. That's often unrealistic. The goal is to learn how to speak anyway, to gently but consistently push past that fear. Think about it in the simplest terms, like when you were a baby learning to walk. Imagine that moment. You fell down, not once, but many, many times. You didn't just stand up from the floor and immediately start running perfectly the very first time, did you? Absolutely not. But you didn't say to yourself, "Oh, I fell. I guess walking isn't for me. I'll just sit here forever." No, you instinctively tried again and again and again. And each small wobble, each little tumble, each time you lost your balance, it taught you something vital about balance, about gravity, about moving your legs. Speaking English is exactly the same process. Every single time you open your mouth, every single time you attempt a word, a phrase, or a sentence, even if it feels like a small effort, you are taking another crucial step forward. Let me share with you the story of Akira. Akira was a brilliant software engineer from Japan who had moved to Silicon Valley in the United States, a place known for its fast pace and innovative companies. He was incredibly good at his job. He could easily read complex technical documents in English, and he could write intricate computer code without a problem. His understanding of written English was exceptional. But the moment he found himself in team meetings, or even just during casual coffee breaks with colleagues, he became visibly quiet. He knew, deep down, that he needed to speak more to truly connect with his colleagues, to share his ideas, and to advance in his demanding career. But the fear, as he described it, was overwhelming. He told me, his voice a little strained, "Sophia, I hear the words perfectly in my mind. I form the sentence completely and grammatically correct in my head. But then, just as I'm about to open my mouth, I think, what if my pronunciation is bad? What if they don't understand my accent? Or, what if my grammar is wrong in front of everyone?" And then, just like that, the words they stay in my throat. They don't come out. He would diligently practice simple phrases in his apartment every evening. "Good morning, everyone. How was your weekend?" But the moment he walked into the office the next day, the paralyzing fear would return, holding him captive. One day, Akira's manager announced an upcoming change. The team would be having weekly stand-up meetings. These were very short, informal meetings where everyone quickly shares 3 things: what they did yesterday, what they plan to do today, and if they have any problems or blockers stopping their work. Akira dreaded these meetings more than anything. He knew, absolutely, that he would have to speak in front of everyone, with no way to hide. It was at this point that Akira made a crucial decision, a tiny but powerful shift in his approach. He decided on a small, achievable goal for that very first stand-up meeting. He would only say 3 simple sentences. No more, no less. He rehearsed them at home, whispering them to himself until they felt a tiny bit less daunting. Yesterday, I fixed a bug in the code. Today, I will work on the new feature, no blockers. They were short, they were clear, and they were easy to understand. On the day of the meeting, his heart was pounding in his chest, so loudly he thought everyone could hear it. When it was finally his turn, he took a deep, shaky breath, and in a voice that was just a little bit shaky, he managed to say those 3 sentences. Yesterday, I fixed a bug in the code. Today, I will work on the new feature, no blockers. He finished speaking, and then he waited, and to his immense relief, nobody laughed, nobody corrected him. His manager simply nodded and said, "Thanks, Akira." He felt a huge wave of relief wash over him, like a heavy weight had been lifted. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but he had spoken. He had done it. For the next few weeks, Akira strictly stuck to his 3-sentence rule. Each meeting, he said his 3 sentences. As he became slightly more comfortable and his fear started to lessen, he allowed himself to add just 1 more sentence, or a simple, short question. He started saying, "Yesterday, I fixed a bug in the code. Today, I will work on the new feature, no blockers. How are the server updates coming along, Sarah?" Gradually, day by day, his fear started to shrink, becoming smaller and less powerful. And his confidence, bit by bit, began to grow. He realized that simply speaking, even if his English wasn't perfect, even if he made small mistakes, was infinitely better than not speaking at all. The key for Akira was starting incredibly small. Don't aim to give a perfect long speech. Just aim to say something. 1 single word, 1 short phrase, 1 simple sentence. Each small success, no matter how tiny it feels, builds the crucial foundation for bigger, more confident steps. Here's a little practice for you. Right now, as you're listening, think of 1 very simple thing you did today. Perhaps you drank coffee, or you walked your dog, or you read a book. Or think of 1 simple plan you have for tomorrow. Maybe you'll go to the shop, or call a friend, or cook dinner. Now, try to say it out loud in English. Just 1 sentence. Don't worry if it's perfect. Don't overthink the grammar. Just say it. For example, I drank coffee this morning, or tomorrow I'll go to the shop. See? You just spoke English. That's a tiny step, yes. But remember, every single long journey starts with tiny, brave steps. You've just taken one. Once you bravely start pushing past the initial fear, the next significant step towards speaking easily and naturally is to fundamentally train your brain to think in English. This is, without exaggeration, a complete game changer when it comes to fluency. Many English learners, particularly those who are at an intermediate level, have a deeply ingrained habit of doing something called translation in their heads. Let me explain what I mean by this. When you want to say something in English, your brain first thinks of the complete thought or sentence in your native language. Then, you mentally try to translate each individual word from your native language into its English equivalent. And finally, you try to carefully put those English words together into a grammatically correct sentence. This entire mental process is incredibly slow. It consumes a tremendous amount of mental energy, and it makes your spoken English sound unnatural, hesitant, and often very stilted, almost like you're reading from a dictionary or a phrasebook in your mind. It also makes you feel utterly exhausted after just a few minutes of conversation. Thinking in English, by contrast, means you completely you jump over that slow, tiring translation step. When you want to say something, the English words and sentences come directly to your mind, almost instantaneously. Imagine how you think about what you're going to have for dinner tonight. Do you first think, I will eat that food for dinner, in your native language, then translate each word into English, and then construct the English sentence? Of course not. You just think pizza or salad or chicken curry directly in your mind without any translation. That's the ultimate goal for your English speaking. Let me share the inspiring story of Maria. Maria was a bright university student from Brazil, deeply engaged in her studies of international relations. She had an impressive command of English vocabulary, and her reading comprehension was excellent. However, when she tried to speak, she always felt incredibly slow, as if her brain was working far too hard just to produce a simple sentence. She once confessed to me, with a sigh, "Sophia, I always translate. It's like I have two brains working at the same time inside my head. My Portuguese brain and my English brain. And for speaking, the Portuguese brain always wins the race. It's so frustrating." This mental bottleneck was particularly problematic for her in the fast-paced group discussions that were a regular part of her university classes. Maria decided she needed to try something different, something radical. She committed to having English-only moments throughout her day, dedicating specific times where she would only think in English. She started incredibly small, making it an easy habit to adopt. For just 10 minutes every morning, while she was performing simple automatic tasks like making coffee and preparing her breakfast, she would try to think only in English. She would narrate her actions to herself, silently at first in her mind, then gradually whispering them aloud when she was alone. "Okay, I'm putting water in the kettle. Now I'm turning on the stove. The water's boiling. I need a mug. Where's my coffee?" She might even add a little detail like, "This coffee smells delicious." It felt quite silly at first, like she was talking to herself, which, of course, she technically was. But she persevered. She kept doing it consistently, day after day. Then she slowly expanded this practice to other routine daily activities. When she walked to class, she would describe everything she saw around her. "The sky's cloudy today. There are many people on the street. I see a red car. The trees are green. The birds are singing." When she was doing simple chores, she would think, "I need to wash the dishes. The sink's full of plates. Now I'll wipe the counter. I need to clean the table." She didn't worry at all about perfect grammar or using complex vocabulary. Her sole focus was simply on forming thoughts directly in English, using the words she already knew. Notice how naturally I'm using contractions here, like I'm instead of I am and it's instead of it is. This is how native speakers usually talk in casual settings, and incorporating them helps you sound much more natural and less formal. Over time, something truly amazing happened. Maria found that when she was in a real conversation, the English words started coming to her much more quickly and effortlessly. She wasn't translating nearly as much as before. Her brain was slowly but surely getting accustomed to forming thoughts directly in English. She even told me that sometimes she would dream in English. This small, consistent practice of thinking in English, even when she wasn't actually talking to anyone else, completely changed her fluency. She learned that thinking in English is like building a direct, high-speed pathway in your brain, a mental highway straight to English, completely bypassing the old, winding, slow road of translation. Here's a practical exercise you can try for yourself, starting today. Choose a simple daily activity that doesn't require too much intense focus. Something like showering, walking, doing the dishes, or preparing a meal. For just 5 minutes, commit to describing everything you see, hear, or do, only in English. You can do it silently in your head, or whisper it if you're alone and feel comfortable. For example, if you're making a sandwich, you might think, I'm taking out the bread. I need some cheese. I'll cut the tomato. This knife's sharp. I need to spread the butter. Don't stop. Don't judge yourself. Just keep going, even if you repeat words or hesitate. This continuous flow trains your brain to connect directly with English, building those new neural pathways. It's a powerful way to unlock direct English thought. Once you start thinking directly in English, the next powerful step to sounding more natural, more like a native speaker, is not just by learning individual words, but by truly understanding and using everyday phrases and idioms. These are groups of words that naturally go together, almost like pre-packaged units of meaning. Often, their overall meaning isn't obvious from simply understanding each individual word in the phrase. Native speakers use them constantly, effortlessly, and without even consciously thinking about them. They make your English sound fluent, authentic, and truly conversational, not just grammatically correct. For instance, instead of saying, I am very tired, a native speaker might very commonly say, I'm worn out or I'm exhausted. Both of these phrases mean very tired, but sound more natural in casual conversation. Instead of, I am feeling sick, they might say, I'm under the weather. This idiom literally means you are ill, but not usually seriously so. These are common informal phrases you'll hear all the time. You certainly don't need to learn thousands of them all at once, but learning the most common ones that apply to daily situations can make a truly significant difference in how natural and fluent you sound. You'll also notice that native speakers frequently use contractions, which are shortened forms of words, like don't instead of do not, or can't instead of cannot, or it's instead of it is. These contractions are not just for informal speech. They are used constantly and make your spoken English flow more smoothly and sound less formal or stiff. Let's delve into the story of Chen. Chen was a diligent marketing professional from Taiwan. He had a strong vocabulary, and his grammar was consistently good, indicating a solid understanding of English rules. However, he felt that his spoken English sounded a bit too formal, almost like he was speaking directly from a textbook or giving a prepared speech. He yearned to sound more conversational, more relaxed, more natural, especially when interacting with his international clients and colleagues in casual, everyday settings. He specifically wanted to get a handle on their jokes, their slang, and be able to confidently use some himself. Chen decided to embark on a new kind of learning journey. He became a dedicated phrase hunter. He started actively and consciously listening for common phrases and idioms whenever he watched English TV shows, listened to podcasts, and even when his colleagues were simply shooting the breeze. When he heard a phrase he didn't immediately know or understand, he wouldn't just ignore it and let it pass. He would quickly and diligently write it down in a small notebook that he carried with him everywhere. For example, he heard someone say, "That project really took off." He wrote it down, understanding that took off in this context meant it became very successful very quickly. He heard, "Let's get down to business." He wrote that down too, understanding it meant, "Let's start working seriously." Then came the second, equally crucial step. He didn't just write them down, he made a conscious and deliberate effort to use them. He started with a very manageable goal: one new phrase a day. If he learned take off, he would actively try to use it in a conversation later that day. Maybe he'd say to a colleague during a meeting, "I hope our new product really takes off." If he learned get down to business, he might suggest to a team member, "Okay, let's get down to business and finish this report before lunch." It felt a bit awkward at first, a little forced, as if he were trying on new clothes that didn't quite fit. Sometimes he even used a phrase in the slightly wrong situation, and people might look a little confused. But Chen didn't let that get him down. Instead, he would politely and bravely ask, "Did I use that correctly?" Or, "Is that the right way to say it in this situation?" Most people were not only happy to explain, but also impressed by his effort and willingness to learn. Over time, these common phrases started to come naturally to him without conscious effort. His English began to sound less like it was recited from a textbook and much more like a genuine, natural conversation. He began to understand jokes better, the nuances of humor became clearer, and he even started making a few witty jokes of his own. He realized that mastering these small groups of words, these everyday phrases, was like unlocking a secret code. A code that made his English sound much more authentic, connected, and genuinely fluent. Here's a simple exercise for you to try right after this episode. The next time you listen to an English podcast or watch an English show, try to identify just 3 new phrases that native speakers use naturally. Don't worry about understanding every single word if it's an idiom. Just focus on groups of words that seem to go together and have a particular meaning. Write them down in your notebook or phone. Then, over the next day or two, make a conscious effort to use each of those 3 phrases at least once. You can use them in your own thoughts when you're thinking in English, or if you have a chance, in a conversation with someone. For example, you might hear the phrase, "It's raining cats and dogs." Try to say it out loud, perhaps describing the weather. "Wow, it's really raining cats and dogs today." The key is to actively use them to make them part of your active vocabulary. When we talk about achieving true fluency in English, it's not just about how many words you know or how quickly you can speak them. A very, very important part of sounding fluent, natural, and being easily understood is mastering pronunciation and intonation. Pronunciation is about how clearly and correctly you say individual sounds and words. Intonation, on the other hand, is often referred to as the music of English. It's the way your voice naturally goes up and down, the rhythm and the stress you place on certain words and syllables within sentences. Good intonation is absolutely crucial because it helps you express meaning, convey emotion, and makes your English sound much more natural, pleasant, and engaging for your listener. Think about listening to a song. If you were to sing all the notes flat, on the same single tone, without any melody, without any rise and fall, it wouldn't sound very good, would it? It would be boring and hard to listen to. English, when spoken naturally, is very similar to music. When you speak, your voice naturally goes up and down, like waves. Sometimes you put stress, that's extra emphasis or force, on certain words to make your meaning very clear or to highlight something important. For example, if you say, "I love coffee," by putting stress on love, you emphasize your strong feeling for coffee. But if you say, "I love coffee," by stressing coffee, you might be contrasting it with another drink, perhaps suggesting you love coffee but not tea. These small changes in intonation make a significant difference in how your message is understood and how natural you sound. Let's hear the story of Sarah. Sarah was a talented graphic designer from Germany. Her grammar was almost flawless, Her vocabulary was extensive, indicating a high level of written English. However, she often felt that native speakers sometimes struggled to fully understand her, especially during phone calls or when she was speaking quickly. She also felt her English sounded a bit flat, lacking emotional expression, almost monotone. Through careful observation and feedback, she learned that while her individual word pronunciation was quite good, her intonation pattern was often quite different from native English speakers. She frequently put stress on the wrong words in a sentence, or her voice didn't rise and fall naturally in questions or statements, which sometimes made her sound less engaged or even a bit unclear. Sarah decided she needed to address this music of English. She committed to trying a technique called shadowing. Shadowing is an incredibly powerful and effective method where you listen to a short piece of English audio, perhaps a snippet from a podcast, a sentence from a news report, or a short scene from a movie. And then you try to speak along with it at the very same time, almost like an echo. The goal is not just to repeat the words, but to copy everything: the pronunciation of individual words, the rhythm of the sentence, the intonation, the speed, and even the natural pauses. It's like mimicking a singer to learn their style. Sarah started with very short clips, maybe just 30 seconds long, often choosing scenes from her favorite TV show where the characters spoke clearly and naturally. She would listen to a single sentence multiple times. Then, she would try to say that sentence exactly as the native speaker did, focusing intently on matching their rhythm, their melody, and their stress patterns. For example, if a character said, "What are you doing tonight?" with the voice rising on tonight to indicate a question, Sarah would try to copy that exact rise and fall, that specific melody. She would even record herself doing this, playing back her own voice and comparing it directly to the original to hear the differences and make adjustments. It was hard at first. It felt unnatural and sometimes frustrating. But Sarah was patient and persistent. After just a few weeks of consistent shadowing, even dedicating only 10 to 15 minutes a day, Sarah noticed a remarkable change. Her colleagues started understanding her more easily, especially on the phone. She felt her voice becoming more expressive, more natural, and less flat. She was no longer just saying words. She was speaking them with the right tune, the right emotion. This dedicated practice helped her not just with individual sounds, but with the overall flow and rhythm of English, making her sound much more fluent and significantly easier to understand. Shadowing is an amazing tool because it simultaneously trains your ear and your mouth. Here's a practice challenge for you to try right after this. Find a short audio clip from a podcast, a short news report, or a scene from an English show that you genuinely enjoy. Make sure the speaker is clear and not speaking excessively fast. Listen to just one sentence. Now, pause the audio. Try to say that sentence out loud, exactly as you heard it. Pay close attention to which words are stressed, where the voice rises or falls, and the overall rhythm. Repeat it a few times until you feel a little more comfortable. Then move to the next sentence. This focused attention on the music of English will dramatically improve your intonation and, in turn, your overall fluency. It's a key step to sounding truly natural. When we talk about fluency, remember that speaking is not just about producing sounds or stringing words together. It's fundamentally a two-way street, a dynamic exchange. To truly talk to anyone in English easily and naturally, you need to master the crucial art of active listening and responding. This means genuinely paying full attention to what the other person is saying, not just passively hearing their words, but deeply understanding their message. And, critically, not just waiting for your turn to speak. It also means responding in a way that clearly shows you understand them and are fully engaged in the conversation. It's all about building a real, meaningful connection with the person you're speaking with. Many English learners, especially those worried about making mistakes, feel immense pressure to speak perfectly. Because of this pressure, while the other person is talking, they are often mentally preoccupied. They are either thinking intensely about what they are going to say next, trying to form their perfect response, or they are silently correcting their own grammar or pronunciation mistakes in their head from a previous sentence. This mental multitasking means they are not truly, actively listening to the person speaking. And if you're not genuinely listening, it's incredibly difficult to have a natural, spontaneous, and engaging conversation. Your responses will feel forced or disconnected. Let me tell you about the journey of Miguel. Miguel was a talented chef from Spain, working in a bustling, high-pressure international kitchen in London. He was excellent at giving instructions to his team in English. Chop the onions quickly. Pass me the salt, please, because these were direct and often one-way commands. But when it came to casual conversations during short breaks or after work, he struggled significantly. He found it incredibly hard to follow quick, informal exchanges among his colleagues, and he often felt a bit out of the loop. He realized his problem wasn't just about speaking English, it was equally about listening actively to the natural flow of conversation. Miguel decided he needed to change his approach to listening. He committed to focusing 100% on what the other person was saying. He would consciously stop himself from thinking about his reply until the other person had completely finished speaking. He also learned a few key, very common phrases to show he was listening and to buy himself a little time before responding with his own thoughts. For example, he learned to say, with genuine interest, "Oh, really?" or "That's interesting," and the simple but effective "I see." He also used phrases that invited more information, like, "Tell me more about that," or to confirm understanding, "So, you mean?" He started using these phrases actively in his daily interactions. For example, if a colleague said, "My weekend was super busy, I redecorated my whole living room," Miguel wouldn't immediately jump in to talk about his own weekend. Instead, he would pause, make eye contact, and say, "Oh, really? That sounds like a lot of work. How'd it turn out?" This simple exchange immediately showed he was listening, he was engaged, and it gave him a natural moment to process the information before forming his own thought or question. If another colleague complained, "The train was delayed for an hour this morning. It was a nightmare," Miguel would respond, "That's frustrating. So, you mean you were late for work because of the delay?" This way, he confirmed his understanding, expressed empathy, and naturally kept the conversation flowing. Miguel also started asking more follow-up questions. Instead of just giving a short, blunt answer, he would ask a related question back. If someone asked him, "How was your day?" Зрение, вместо того, чтобы просто сказать «хорошо», он расширял слегка и затем спрашивал обратно. Это было довольно хорошо на самом деле. I had a busy lunch service, but it went well. How about your day? What have you been up to? This transformed the conversation into a truly two-way exchange, a real dialogue. Over time, Miguel found that not only did his understanding of spoken English improve dramatically because he was truly listening, but he also felt much more connected to his colleagues. His conversations became natural, enjoyable, and truly engaging. He learned a profound lesson. Being a good speaker also means being a great listener. They are two sides of the same coin of effective communication. Here's a practical exercise for you to try. The next time you're listening to an English conversation, whether it's on a podcast, a news report, or even a short video clip, instead of just trying to understand the main idea, try to listen for small, specific details. After the speaker finishes, pause the audio and try to silently ask yourself a follow-up question based only on what they just said. For example, if they talk about going to the park, ask yourself, which park did they go to? Or, what specific activity did they do there? Or, what was the weather like when they went? This small but mighty practice trains your active listening muscles, preparing you for more natural and engaged real-life conversations. Learning to speak English is very much like building a strong muscle. You can read all the books in the world about weightlifting techniques. You can watch countless videos of athletes, but until you actually go to the gym and consistently lift weights, you won't get physically stronger. The exact same principle applies to speaking English. You can study all the grammar rules in a textbook. You can memorize endless vocabulary lists. You can understand every word in a news article. But until you actually practice speaking consistently, that means regularly and in real-world situations, you won't become fluent. This consistency is far, far more important than intensity. Even short bursts of daily practice are much more effective and beneficial than long, infrequent, tiring study sessions. Many learners feel they absolutely need a special, expensive tutor or a dedicated language exchange partner to practice effectively. While those resources are undoubtedly wonderful and can be very helpful, they are not always available or affordable for everyone. The good news is, you can create many valuable speaking practice opportunities for yourself every single day, often without needing anyone else. Let's delve into the story of Aisha. Aisha was a bright university student from Egypt, living in a relatively small city where there weren't many native English speakers outside her university classes. She was incredibly determined to improve her spoken English, as she knew it was vital for her future career. However, she felt truly limited by the lack of consistent, direct speaking practice. She couldn't afford a private tutor every day, and finding reliable language exchange partners who shared her schedule was proving very difficult. Aisha, being resourceful, decided to become her own speaking partner. She created a simple yet powerful daily dialogue routine for herself. Every morning, while she was getting ready, brushing her teeth, making her bed, choosing her clothes, she would stand in front of the mirror and talk about her plans for the day. She'd say, "Good morning, Aisha. What are you gonna do today? First, I'll have breakfast. Then I've got a class at 9 a.m. I need to study for my exam later this afternoon." Notice how naturally she used contractions like gonna, I'll, and I've got. These are incredibly common in natural, everyday speech and help you sound less formal and more fluent. As she went about her day, she would continue to narrate her actions and observations in English. When walking to the library, she'd think aloud, "I'm walking to the library now. The weather's a bit chilly today. I should have worn a warmer jacket. I see a dog crossing the street. He looks very happy." If she heard a sudden noise outside her window, she would imagine someone asking her, "What was that noise?" And she would try to answer herself in English. If she read an interesting article online, she would imagine a friend asking her, "What did you think about that article? What was the main point?" And she would try to summarize and express her opinions in English. At the end of the day, before bed, She would quickly summarize her entire day out loud in English, even if it was just a few sentences. Today was pretty busy. I went to class, then the library. I studied for 3 hours. I cooked dinner, and now I'm feeling quite tired. Aisha also actively sought out opportunities for small, real-world English interactions. When she went to the local supermarket, she made it a point to ask the cashier a simple question. "How's it going today?" Or, "Is this queue usually this long?" Even if the conversation lasted only a few seconds, it was real, unpredictable practice. She joined a local hobby group related to her interests, a simple book club, where she knew she would naturally have to speak English to discuss the books. She focused on contributing just 1 or 2 sentences in each meeting, gradually building her confidence. Over several months, Aisha's confidence and fluency soared dramatically. She wasn't just studying English from books, she was living in English for significant parts of her day. Her brain got accustomed to producing English automatically, almost without conscious effort. She learned a profound lesson. Consistent, varied practice, even if it's mostly by yourself, is incredibly powerful. It taught her that every single moment can be a chance to speak, a chance to improve, if you simply choose to make it one. Here's an idea for you to try, starting today. Commit to a 5-minute daily speaking challenge. Choose a random, simple topic that comes to your mind. It could be my favorite food, what I did last weekend, my dream vacation, or describe your favorite animal. Set a timer on your phone for 5 minutes. And then, just talk about that topic out loud to yourself. Don't stop for grammar. Don't worry about pronunciation. Don't judge your choice of words. Just keep the English flowing for the full 5 minutes. Do this every single day for a week, and I promise you will feel a noticeable and significant difference in your ability to speak without hesitation. It builds momentum and confidence. The fear of making mistakes is perhaps the single biggest barrier that prevents English learners from truly speaking easily and naturally. Many learners are conditioned to feel that a mistake is a sign of failure, that it means they are bad at English, or that it somehow reflects negatively on their intelligence. This belief, I want to emphasize, could not be further from the truth. In reality, mistakes are not failures. They are invaluable opportunities to learn. Think of them as little signposts, little arrows, pointing directly to exactly what you need to focus on next in your learning journey. Every single fluent speaker you know, whether they learned English as their first language or as a second, makes mistakes. The fundamental difference is that fluent speakers don't allow those mistakes to stop them. They learn from them, they adapt, and they simply keep going. Think of a scientist conducting an experiment. If the experiment doesn't yield the expected results, or if something goes wrong, does the scientist immediately give up and declare themselves a failure? No. A good scientist looks at what went wrong. They analyze the data, they adjust their method, and they try again armed with new information. They see the failure not as an end, but as valuable information, a crucial part of the discovery process. You absolutely should treat your English-speaking mistakes in the exact same way. They are data points, not judgments. Let's illustrate this with the story of Kenji. Kenji was a university student from Japan, studying abroad for a year in Canada. He was naturally very shy and, perhaps more significantly, extremely afraid of making mistakes when speaking English. If he accidentally said something wrong in a conversation, even a small error, he would visibly blush, his face turning red, and he would apologize profusely, often saying, "I'm so sorry, my English is bad." He would then usually become very quiet for the rest of the conversation, withdrawing into himself. He would spend hours meticulously correcting his written essays, aiming for perfection. But he rarely spoke because he couldn't correct himself with the same precision in real-time conversation. This intense fear of error was completely stopping his progress in spoken English. His English conversation partner, a kind and understanding Canadian student named Liam, noticed Kenji's deep struggle. One day, Liam gently said to him, "Kenji, your English is great. You communicate your ideas very well. And you know what? Everyone makes mistakes. Seriously, even I do sometimes. The most important thing, the absolute top priority, is just to communicate your ideas. Don't worry so much about being perfect. We understand you, and that's what matters." Kenji still looked doubtful. The fear was deeply ingrained. So, Liam suggested a simple but powerful exercise. "Next time you make a mistake," Liam advised, "don't apologize. Just notice it in your mind. And if you have a chance, try to correct yourself quickly, subtly, or just keep going with your thought. Don't sweat it. Don't stop your flow of speaking." Kenji decided to give it a shot. One day, during a lively group discussion in class, he was trying to say that he went to the store yesterday. But in his nervousness, instead of the correct past tense, went, he accidentally said, "I go to the store yesterday." He immediately froze, the old habit of panic setting in, ready to apologize and stop talking. But then he vividly remembered Liam's words. He took a tiny breath and quickly, almost without conscious thought, he smoothly corrected himself. "Oh, sorry, I went to the store yesterday." And then, crucially, he continued talking about his visit to the store without dwelling on the correction. He finished his sentence, and to his astonishment, nobody even seemed to notice the original mistake. The conversation just flowed on naturally. Afterward, he felt a huge sense of victory, a surge of pride. He hadn't stopped. He had corrected himself on the fly. This small win, this tiny act of bravery, gave him immense courage. He started to see his mistakes not as personal failures, but as natural, expected parts of the learning process. If someone politely corrected him, instead of shrinking, he would say, "Ah, thanks for that. I always confuse that word. Tense." He realized that most native speakers were not judging him. On the contrary, they were trying to help him. Sometimes, his honest mistakes even led to funny moments that broke the ice and made people laugh with him, not at him. Kenji learned that true fluency isn't about avoiding mistakes altogether. It's about managing them effectively, about being brave enough to make them, resilient enough to recover from them, and humble enough to learn from them. The path to fluency is indeed paved with mistakes, so embrace them as stepping stones. Here's a small, empowering challenge for you. The very next time you're speaking English and you realize you've made a mistake, and you will, that's part of it, try not to apologize. Just gently, quickly correct yourself if you can, or simply keep going with your sentence. Don't dwell on it. Then, later, when you have a quiet moment, make a mental note of that mistake. This focused attention will help you learn to maintain your conversational flow and not let small errors derail your confidence. It's about building resilience in your speaking, while focusing on mastering common everyday phrases and embracing self-correction is excellent. A significant part of truly speaking easily, naturally, and fluently also involves continuously expanding your vocabulary and varying your sentence structures. You don't need to know every single word in the dictionary. That's an unrealistic and unnecessary goal. However, having a richer, more diverse vocabulary allows you to express your ideas more precisely, more vividly, and more interestingly. Similarly, varying your sentence structures means you're not always using the same simple subject-verb-object pattern. This makes your speech sound more sophisticated, more engaging, and much more natural, reflecting the complex ways native speakers naturally combine ideas. Think of it like building a beautiful house. You absolutely need strong basic bricks. These are your core vocabulary and simple foundational sentences. But to make that house truly beautiful, functional, and unique, you also need different types of windows, various styles of doors, and decorative elements like archways or balconies. These represent your more specific, nuanced words and your varied, more complex sentence structures. They add depth and texture. Let's delve into the story of Isabelle. Isabelle was a budding young journalist from France with a strong ambition to work for an international news agency. She could comfortably chat about daily life, discussing her hobbies or recent events. However, when she had to express more complex ideas, articulate subtle differences, or describe abstract concepts, she frequently found herself repeating the same basic words or resorting to very simple, repetitive sentence structures. She yearned to sound more articulate, more expressive, and more nuanced in her English, fitting for her journalistic aspirations. She often felt like she sometimes hit a wall when trying to express these complex thoughts. Isabelle decided to focus on active vocabulary acquisition and sentence pattern recognition. Instead of just passively reading news articles or listening to interviews, she started to actively interact with the English texts and audio she consumed. Her method involved several steps, seeking synonyms and nuance. If she saw a common basic word like important, she would consciously look for synonyms used by the native speaker or writer in the same text or conversation, words like crucial, essential, significant, or paramount. She'd pay close attention to how native speakers used more vivid, precise words to describe things. Instead of simply very good, she'd notice words like excellent, outstanding, remarkable, superb, or impressive. Mastering phrasal verbs. She became keenly aware of phrasal verbs, which are verbs combined with prepositions or adverbs. These are incredibly common in natural English, especially in casual conversation, and mastering them makes you sound far more natural. For example, she'd learned that put off means to delay, or take on means to accept a task. Recognizing complex structures. She'd also actively look for and analyze more complex sentence structures. This included sentences that used conjunctions to connect ideas such as although, whereas, unless, or provided that. She'd notice how relative clauses were used to add detail, or how different, more advanced verb tenses were naturally integrated. After identifying these new words, phrases, or sentence patterns, Isabelle didn't just write them down in a long list. She would immediately create a few personalized example sentences using those new words or structures, making sure to relate them directly to her own life, interests, or journalistic topics. For example, if she learned crucial, she might write, "Understanding complex sentence structures is crucial for a journalist." If she saw a sentence like, "Although it was raining, they decided to go for a walk," she might create her own. "Although I was tired after class, I decided to finish my homework." Then, similar to Chen's phrase hunter method, Isabelle made a conscious and consistent effort to integrate these newly acquired words and structures into her own speaking and writing. She started with her internal monologues, then gradually moved to conversations with her English-speaking friends and classmates. She sometimes deliberately used a new word or phrase, even if it felt a little awkward or forced initially, just to get it out there. Over time, her vocabulary expanded not just in quantity, but in quality and precision, allowing her to choose the perfect word for a particular situation or nuance. Her sentences became far more varied, more interesting, and less repetitive, making her speech flow more smoothly and sound significantly more sophisticated. She learned that a rich vocabulary and diverse sentence structures are like having a wider, more vibrant range of colors on an artist's palette. They empower you to paint a much more detailed, beautiful, and expressive picture with your words. Here's a practical and enriching practice prompt for you. The next time you're reading an English article, listening to a podcast, or watching a documentary, try to actively identify one new synonym for a common word you already know. Then, try to find one sentence that uses a slightly more complex structure than you usually use. Write them down and create your own unique example sentence for each, connecting it to your life or interests. Finally, make a conscious effort to use these new words and structures in your internal monologue or in a spoken conversation within the next 24 hours. This deliberate practice will greatly enhance your ability to express yourself with nuance and flair. Speaking easily, naturally, and fluently isn't just about the mechanics of language, the correct grammar, the right words, the proper pronunciation. It's profoundly about being able to connect with people on a human level and making your communication genuinely interesting and engaging. And one of the most powerful, universal tools for connection and engagement is storytelling. We are all, as human beings, wired to listen to stories. From ancient campfire tales to modern Netflix series, stories capture our attention and emotions. When you can tell a short, simple, personal story in English about something that happened to you, something you experienced, or even something you just observed, it makes your English far more attractive, memorable, and impactful. It allows you to show your personality, your perspective, and your humanity, not just your language ability. You absolutely don't need to be a professional storyteller or a comedian. Even short, everyday anecdotes, tiny narratives about daily events count as powerful storytelling. Think about your day. Did something funny happen? Did you have a slightly frustrating experience? Did you learn something new or unexpected? These are all potential seeds for engaging stories. Let's delve into the story of Omar. Omar was a dynamic young entrepreneur from Saudi Arabia whose work frequently required him to attend large international conferences and seminars all over the world, from bustling trade shows in Dubai to tech expos in Berlin. He was exceptionally skilled at presenting his technical work, giving clear and detailed speeches about complex cybersecurity issues. However, during the more informal periods, the coffee breaks, the casual networking sessions, or during group dinners, he would often find himself standing alone, feeling incredibly awkward and isolated. He knew, deep down, that he was missing out on crucial opportunities to connect with potential collaborators, clients, and mentors, simply because he struggled so much with initiating and maintaining small talk. He felt like he literally didn't know what to say or how to even begin a casual chat with someone new. He desperately wanted to be able to hold his own in those relaxed, informal chats. Omar decided to tackle this challenge by practicing micro-storytelling. He didn't aim to tell long, complex narratives. Instead, every evening, he would choose just one interesting or memorable moment from his day. It could be something funny, annoying, or surprising, and he would try to tell it out loud in English, as if he were talking to a close friend. He focused on a very simple, easy-to-remember structure for his micro-stories, setting the scene. He would start by giving a little context, something like, "This morning, something funny happened on my way to work." Or, "Yesterday, I had a very strange experience at the supermarket." This grabs the listener's attention, the main event. He would then describe what actually happened using simple past tense. For example, the bus was really crowded, and then suddenly an old lady dropped all her oranges, and they rolled everywhere. The resolution or outcome. He'd explain what happened next. Everyone on the bus helped her pick them up, and we all laughed about it together. The feeling or lesson. Finally, he'd add a small personal touch, explaining how he felt or what he learned. It made me feel happy to see people helping each other, even in a busy place. At first, his stories were very basic, and he would often struggle to find the right words or get his verb tenses mixed up. But he kept practicing consistently. He realized that adding specific sensory details made the story much more vivid and engaging for the listener. So, instead of just, "A lady dropped things," he would say, "An old lady with a bright red hat dropped all her oranges and they bounced down the aisle." Then, bravely, he started to look for opportunities to share these micro-stories in real casual conversations. For example, if someone mentioned a crowded bus, he might seize the moment and say, "Oh, I know exactly what you mean. This morning, something similar happened to me. The bus was really crowded, and then an old lady actually dropped all her oranges." His listeners would usually be drawn in, asking natural follow-up questions like, "Oh no, did she get them all back? Were they bruised?" This led to more natural conversation. Omar found that telling stories not only made his English much more engaging and enjoyable for others, but it also dramatically helped his own fluency. It forced him to naturally use different verb tenses, descriptive adjectives, and connective words to link his ideas. It made his English feel alive and dynamic. He learned that sharing personal stories is one of the most fundamental human ways to connect with people, and it's a wonderful, authentic way to practice speaking English naturally. Here's a storytelling challenge for you. At the end of today, think of one small, interesting, or slightly unusual thing that happened to you. It could be something you saw on your way to work, a funny moment with a pet, or a surprising news item. Now, tell that story out loud in English, either to yourself or to a trusted friend or language partner. Focus on the simple structure. Tell us what happened, the main event, the resolution, and how you felt. Try to use simple past tense to describe what happened. Don't worry about perfection or complex grammar. Just aim to get the story out clearly and engagingly. You'll be surprised how much this practice helps your fluency, your confidence, and your ability to connect in real conversations. It's about sharing you in English. To truly speak easily, naturally, and fluently in English, it's essential to understand that communication goes far beyond just the words you choose. It's also profoundly about nonverbal communication. This broad category includes your body language, your facial expressions, how and when you make eye contact, and even your hand gestures. These nonverbal elements play a huge, often underestimated role in how you are understood, how you convey your meaning and emotions, and how connected you feel to your conversation partner. They can convey meaning, emphasize your points, and show emotion, even when your spoken English vocabulary might be somewhat limited. Think about watching a movie with the sound turned off. You can still understand a tremendous amount of what's happening, who's angry, who's happy, who's confused, what the general mood is, just by watching the actors' faces, their posture, and their movements, right? This is because nonverbal cues are largely universal across cultures, and they act as powerful support systems for your spoken words. They add layers of meaning and authenticity. Let's hear the story of Chika. Chika was a talented fashion designer from Nigeria. She was living and working in Milan, Italy, where she spoke Italian beautifully and confidently, using natural gestures common in Italian culture. However, when she had to switch to English, which she used extensively for her international clients, she often felt stiff, formal, and unnatural. She worried so much about getting her English words perfectly right that she completely forgot to use her body to communicate. Her English felt very academic, even when she was trying to be friendly and engaging. She noticed that native English speakers often used their hands when they talked or had expressive faces, and she wanted to bring that same naturalness and vibrancy to her own English speaking. She felt like she needed to loosen up. Chika decided to actively observe and practice integrating nonverbal cues into her English speaking. She started by making a conscious effort to make comfortable eye contact with people when she spoke. Not a rigid stare, but a natural gaze that showed she was engaged and listening. This simple act immediately conveyed confidence and attentiveness. When she was happy, she would allow herself to smile openly. When she felt confused, she would try to show a slightly confused look on her face, perhaps a furrowed brow. If something was genuinely funny, she would allow herself to laugh out loud, matching her expression to her feeling. She diligently practiced making her face reflect her words and emotions. She also paid close attention to how many native English speakers naturally used their hands to explain things or to emphasize a point. When she said a word like big, she would subtly open her hands wide to illustrate its size. When she said small, she might bring her fingers closer together. She also learned to use small, quick nods of her head to show agreement and gentle headshakes to show disagreement, even when she wasn't speaking full sentences. These tiny gestures added a layer of nonverbal understanding. At first, it felt a little strange, even a bit self-conscious, like she was performing on a stage. But as she practiced consistently, she realized how much these nonverbal elements helped her communication. When she used gestures, it sometimes even helped her to remember a word she was struggling to recall. Or it helped her listener understand her meaning more clearly, even if her spoken words weren't perfectly precise. For example, if she couldn't remember the exact word huge, but could say very big, a gesture of opening her arms wide would powerfully and clearly convey the meaning. People started responding more warmly to her, finding her more approachable and engaging. She, in turn, felt more comfortable and natural in her English conversations. She learned a crucial lesson. Nonverbal communication isn't just an optional addition to your English. It's a fundamental, deeply integrated part of expressing yourself and truly connecting with others. It helps your words carry more power, more emotion, and makes your English instantly sound more fluent and genuine. Here's a simple yet effective practice challenge for you. The next time you're speaking English, whether you're talking to yourself or to someone else, try to be consciously aware of your body and your face. When you express happiness, allow yourself to smile broadly. When you ask a question, try to raise your eyebrows slightly to indicate curiosity. When you say something important or make a strong point, try a small natural gesture with your hand to emphasize it. You don't need to be overly dramatic or theatrical. Just let your body naturally support and enhance your words. You'll feel more confident, and your listeners will feel more connected to you, making your conversations much more dynamic. Speaking easily and naturally in English often begins with a skill that many learners find challenging but is incredibly important: small talk. Small talk refers to those light, casual conversations we have with people we don't know very well, or at the very beginning of a more formal meeting, or while waiting in line at a shop or for transport. It might seem unimportant, even trivial, because the topics are usually not serious. But small talk is actually crucial for building rapport, breaking the ice, and showing that you are friendly, open, and approachable. Many learners find small talk difficult because it often involves unpredictable topics, relies heavily on natural, informal language, and doesn't follow strict rules. But mastering it is a key gateway to feeling comfortable talking to anyone in English. Think of small talk as the essential warm-up before a bigger, more serious game. You wouldn't just jump straight into a critical business discussion without a quick, "How are you doing today?" or "Did you find parking okay?" Small talk truly greases the wheels of conversation, making the entire interaction more comfortable and natural for everyone involved. Let's talk about the experience of Javier. Javier was a highly skilled cybersecurity expert from Mexico. His job frequently required him to attend large international conferences and seminars all over the world. He was exceptionally good at presenting his technical work, giving clear and detailed speeches about complex cybersecurity issues. However, during the more informal periods, the coffee breaks, the casual networking events, or during group dinners, he would often find himself standing alone, feeling incredibly awkward and isolated. He knew deep down that he was missing out on crucial opportunities to connect with potential collaborators and clients simply because he struggled so much with initiating and maintaining small talk. He felt like he literally didn't know what to say or how to even begin a casual chat with someone new. He desperately wanted to be able to hold his own in those relaxed, informal chats. Javier decided to take a systematic approach. He began to actively research and practice common small talk topics and phrases. He quickly learned that universal, generally safe topics like the weather, current events, travel experiences, hobbies, and food were always safe bets. He also learned and practiced key phrases for initiating small talk and for responding. For initiating small talk, he practiced simple, approachable phrases like, "Hey, how's it going today?" He'd also use common observations as icebreakers, such as, "Nice weather, isn't it?" or "Busy day, huh?" At conferences, he'd use specific, relevant questions like, "Did you have any trouble finding the place?" Or, "Are you enjoying the Conference event so far?" For responding to small talk and extending the conversation, he learned to say things like, "Yeah, it's lovely, thank goodness," or "Not too bad, thanks, you." If someone asked about his day, he'd reply, "A bit crazy, actually, but I'm looking forward to the next session." And he learned to always ask a question back. "It was a bit tricky, but the GPS helped me find it. How was your journey getting here?" Javier started small and bravely. At his very next conference, he set a clear, manageable goal. He would initiate just one small talk conversation per day. He'd carefully pick someone who looked approachable and friendly. His first attempt was during a coffee break. He saw a man looking at his phone and, summoning his courage, he said, "Busy day, huh?" The man looked up, smiled, and replied, "Tell me about it." This conference is packed with great speakers. Javier felt a huge rush of relief. It worked! He then followed up with, "Are you enjoying the presentation so far? Any particular sessions stand out to you?" This simple back and forth continued for a few comfortable minutes, and he even exchanged business cards. He also learned to apply a simple me-do rule for small talk. Make a statement, extend with a question, wait for a response, engage with a follow-up. He noticed that most people genuinely loved talking about themselves or sharing their opinions, so asking open-ended questions like, "What brought you to this conference?" or "What do you think of the latest news on this topic?" worked exceptionally well. Over time, small talk became less daunting and more like a natural, even enjoyable part of his interactions. He started making new connections, both professionally and personally, that he would never have made before. His confidence grew immensely. He learned that small talk, far from being unimportant or trivial, is actually the crucial gateway to deeper, more meaningful conversations and stronger relationships in English. Here's a practical exercise for you. The next time you're in a situation where small talk might occur, try to initiate with one simple, open-ended phrase about the weather or the immediate situation. For example, "Cold day today, isn't it?" Or "Long queue, huh?" Or "That's a nice coffee you have there." Listen carefully to their response, and then try to offer one short, follow-up comment or question. Don't pressure yourself to have a long, complex conversation. Just aim for a friendly, brief exchange. Each small, successful interaction builds your confidence and makes the next one easier. Fluency in English isn't solely about mastering grammar rules, accumulating vast vocabulary, or perfecting your pronunciation. It's profoundly about understanding cultural nuances. This means truly grasping the unspoken rules, the subtle customs, and the typical ways of communicating that are common in English-speaking cultures. This includes a wide range of elements: understanding politeness levels, the role and type of humor, the appropriate level of directness versus indirectness, and even how much personal information is acceptable to share in different situations. Ignoring these often subtle nuances can sometimes lead to misunderstandings, misinterpretations, or even unintentional offense, even if your English is grammatically flawless. Think of it like learning to dance. You can meticulously learn all the individual dance steps, but if you don't feel the rhythm of the music and move with its natural flow and unspoken rules of the dance, your movements won't look natural, graceful, or connected to the other dancers. Cultural nuances are the essential rhythm and unspoken choreography of language. Let's explore the insights gained by Li Wei. Li Wei was an exceptionally talented researcher from China, pursuing a demanding PhD in biology at a prestigious university in the United Kingdom. He was brilliant in his scientific field, his academic English was strong, but he sometimes found social interactions with his British classmates and professors confusing and difficult to navigate. He noticed that they often used humor in ways he didn't immediately grasp, or they were incredibly indirect when giving feedback or making suggestions, which sometimes led him to misunderstand their true meaning or urgency. He wanted to understand not just what they were saying literally, but how they were saying it and what the deeper, unstated message truly meant. He felt like he was constantly missing something. Li Wei decided to become a dedicated cultural observer. He consciously paid attention to far more than just the words being spoken. He started diligently observing politeness markers, how often British people used phrases like "please," "thank you," "could you possibly," "Zrania," "would you mind," "Zrania," and "I was wondering if," even for seemingly simple requests. He realized these weren't just optional additions, they were integral to British politeness. He then made a conscious effort to incorporate them more frequently into his own speech, moving away from more direct translations from his native language. He also paid close attention to indirectness, a hallmark of much British communication. He quickly realized that sometimes a British person saying, "That's an interesting idea," might politely and indirectly mean, "I'm not sure about that idea," or even, "That's not a very good idea, but I don't want to be rude." He learned to listen carefully to the tone of voice, the facial expressions, and the overall context for these unspoken cues. If he was unsure, he learned to ask polite, clarifying questions, not to challenge, but to understand. Could you tell me more about what you mean by interesting? Or what aspects of this idea do you find most interesting? Humor, especially dry wit, sarcasm, and self-deprecating humor, was particularly challenging for him. He started by simply observing when people laughed and trying to analyze the context of the jokes. He learned that a good way to respond to a joke, even if you don't fully get it, is to smile and laugh along and perhaps say, "That's funny," or "You're so witty." This shows engagement even if the specific joke passed him by. He also recognized the concept of social distance, learning that it's generally not appropriate to ask very personal questions to new acquaintances right away, understanding what topics are off limits in casual conversation. Leeway started subtly mirroring the communication styles he observed. When his professor gave him feedback that sounded very polite and indirect, he learned to read between the lines. If his professor said, "Perhaps you could consider exploring this aspect further in your research," instead of thinking, "Oh, it's just a mild suggestion," he understood it often implied, "You should explore this further. It's an important point you've missed." He started using more polite and indirect language in his own requests, like, "Would it be possible to discuss my project tomorrow if you have a moment?" Instead of a more direct and potentially impolite, "I want to discuss my project tomorrow." His diligent efforts began to pay off significantly. His interactions became smoother, more comfortable, and he felt a deeper connection with his classmates and professors. His English, already grammatically strong, gained a new layer of authenticity and naturalness. He learned that understanding cultural nuances is like having a secret decoder ring for conversations. It helps you understand the full, complex message, not just the literal words, and makes your English truly effective and socially appropriate. Here's a cultural observation challenge for you. The next time you're watching an English show or listening to a podcast, pay special attention to how people say things, not just what they say. Notice their politeness levels, their use of humor, and how direct or indirect they are. Try to identify one subtle cultural aspect in their communication that you might not have noticed before. Then, if appropriate and you feel comfortable, try to subtly incorporate that into your own English communication. For example, if you notice they use phrases like "I might suggest" instead of "you should." Zrение. Попробуйте это сами. This active observation will greatly enhance your cultural fluency. Even when you reach a high level of fluency, speaking easily, naturally, and confidently, you will still, inevitably, make mistakes. This is a fundamental truth of language use for everyone. The defining difference for a truly fluent speaker isn't that they magically don't make mistakes. It's that they have developed a crucial, highly valuable skill, self-correction. This means actively recognizing your own errors in real time as you speak, or very soon after you've said them, and then mentally or verbally correcting them on the spot. This ability is incredibly powerful because it transforms every single speaking opportunity into a direct, personalized learning experience, effectively making you your own most effective language teacher. Think of a musician performing a complex piece of music in a concert. If they accidentally hit a wrong note, do they stop the entire concert, apologize profusely, and walk off stage? No. A professional musician quickly adjusts, smoothly corrects the missed note, and continues playing, maintaining the flow of the music. Perhaps they'll make a mental note to practice that tricky section later, but they don't let a small error disrupt the entire performance. You absolutely should treat your English speaking in the exact same way. Errors are simply part of the live performance of language. Let's delve into the self-correction journey of Elena. Elena was a respected university lecturer from Russia, specializing in linguistics. She had an extremely strong command of English. Her knowledge of grammar rules was deep, and her vocabulary was extensive. However, she often found herself making small, persistent grammatical errors in spontaneous conversation, particularly with verb tenses or prepositions. She knew the rules perfectly well in theory, but under the pressure of real-time conversation, her brain sometimes reverted to patterns from her native language. She was keenly aware of these small errors and desperately wanted to be able to identify and fix them herself, without relying on others to correct her. She felt like she often tripped up on these seemingly minor points. Elena decided to implement a specific proactive strategy she called real-time self-correction. While she was speaking, she deliberately developed a habit of active monitoring. She learned to listen to her own voice, almost as if she were a third person observing herself speaking. If she caught herself making a common mistake, for instance, accidentally saying, "I have went," instead of the grammatically correct, "I have gone," she would immediately, smoothly, and without drawing too much attention, correct herself. "Oh, sorry, I have gone to the library many times this month." The crucial element here was to do it naturally, almost as a reflex, without a big, halting apology or completely stopping the flow of the conversation. This quick, almost imperceptible verbal correction is often called a self-correction cue. If she didn't want to correct herself verbally in the moment, perhaps because the mistake was very minor or the conversation was moving too fast, she would just make a quick mental note of it. Later, as soon as she had a quiet moment, she would specifically write down that particular error in a small notebook she dedicated to "My Common Errors." This notebook wasn't about shame, it was a powerful learning tool. At the end of the day or week, she would review this common errors list and engage in targeted practice. For example, if she consistently noticed she said "on the weekend" instead of the more common "at the weekend," she would consciously create 5 new practice sentences using "at the weekend" and say them out loud repeatedly until it started to feel more natural. Elena found that this consistent self-monitoring and subtle correction not only significantly improved her grammatical accuracy over time, but also made her far more confident. She wasn't afraid of making mistakes anymore because she knew she had a powerful strategy to deal with them and learn from them. Her brain was actively engaged in the learning process even during conversations, constantly refining her language use. She realized that self-correction is like having a built-in language tutor, a personal coach constantly helping you refine your English and pushing you towards greater fluency and independence as a speaker. It's an absolutely essential skill for becoming truly proficient and confident. Here's a self-correction practice challenge for you. The next time you are speaking English, try to be consciously mindful of just one specific type of error you know you frequently make. As you speak, try to actively catch yourself. If you make that error, see if you can quickly and smoothly correct it aloud. If you can't, or if you prefer not to interrupt the flow, simply make a mental note of it. Then, later, Write down that specific incorrect phrase and the correct one, and say the correct one aloud 5 times, really focusing on the correct form. This focused attention will help you break old habits, build new correct ones, and learn to maintain your conversational flow without letting small errors derail your confidence. Speaking easily, naturally, and fluently isn't just about direct conversation. It's also about immersing yourself deeply in English beyond structured study. This means consciously and actively engaging with English media, movies, TV shows, podcasts, news broadcasts, music, YouTube videos, and even social media, not just for passive entertainment, but as dynamic, active learning tools. This consistent, varied exposure helps you absorb natural language patterns, pick up modern, informal vocabulary and slang, understand diverse cultural references, and become familiar with different accents and speaking speeds. All of these elements collectively contribute significantly to your fluency, your confidence, and your ability to comfortably engage in conversations. Think of it like cooking a new cuisine. You can read many recipes and study cookbooks, but to truly become a great cook, you need to taste different dishes, watch experienced chefs at work, and actively experiment with ingredients and cooking techniques. This kind of immersive, active engagement builds your intuition, your feel for the language, much faster than just theoretical study. Let's delve into the immersive learning journey of Diego. Diego was a young, aspiring architect from Colombia who had moved to Vancouver, Canada, to further his studies and career. He absolutely loved watching movies and TV shows in English, but his long-standing habit was always to watch them with Spanish subtitles. He knew, however, that he desperately needed to improve his conversational English, particularly his understanding of slang, idiomatic expressions, and how to follow fast-paced, natural dialogue. He wanted to understand jokes and casual conversations without constantly having to ask for clarification. Diego decided to transform his entertainment time into active English learning time. He started by rewatching shows he was already very familiar with, but with a crucial change. He switched the subtitles to English. This way, if he didn't immediately understand an idiom, a piece of slang, or a phrase spoken quickly, he could read it in English and then quickly look it up later. This method allowed him to enjoy the show while still learning. Once he felt relatively comfortable understanding the English subtitles, he bravely took the next step. He gradually tried watching new episodes or familiar scenes without any subtitles at all. He accepted that he wouldn't get every single word, but he focused intently on grasping the main idea, understanding the emotion, and trying to pick up new phrases naturally from context. He also became a dedicated podcast immersion enthusiast. He started listening to English podcasts during his daily commute, while doing chores around his apartment, or even during his gym workouts. He chose podcasts on topics he genuinely enjoyed: history, true crime, science, and even architectural design. He didn't stress about understanding every single word. His focus was on the overall flow of the conversation, the rhythm of natural speech, and the typical way native speakers interacted. He even incorporated music analysis into his routine, listening to English songs more closely, looking up the lyrics, and trying to understand the meaning behind the casual expressions and metaphors within the songs. When Diego encountered a new phrase, an idiom, or a piece of slang in a show or podcast, he would actively pause it, look it up immediately, and then make a mental note, sometimes even whispering it aloud to himself. For example, if a character said, "He totally flaked out on us," he'd learn that flake out means to suddenly fail to do something or to abandon someone at the last minute. Later, he would make a conscious effort to use this new phrase in his own internal monologue, or, if the opportunity arose, in a conversation. Diego found that this consistent, active exposure to authentic, real-world English, combined with his deliberate approach to understanding and using new language, profoundly transformed his ability to understand natural speech. He started recognizing idioms and slang without having to consciously think about them. They simply became part of his intuitive understanding. He began understanding jokes more easily, catching the subtle humor. And most importantly, he felt significantly more confident jumping into conversations because his ear was now finely tuned to the natural rhythm, speed, and intonation of spoken English. He learned that engaging with English media isn't just a passive activity. It's a dynamic, powerful, and incredibly enjoyable way to build intuitive fluency and bridge the gap between academic English and real-life communication. Here's a media engagement challenge for you. Choose one English TV show, a podcast episode, or even a specific YouTube channel that you genuinely enjoy. For just 10 to 15 minutes today, watch or listen with the specific goal of finding 3 new common phrases or pieces of slang that you haven't used before. Write them down. If you're comfortable, try watching or listening to a very short segment without any subtitles, and just focus on grasping the overall gist. This active engagement will greatly accelerate your natural understanding and, in turn, your ability to speak with more ease and authenticity. To truly talk to anyone in English easily, naturally, and fluently, there's an undeniable essential element that no amount of self-study or media immersion can fully replace: real people to talk to. While practicing by yourself is incredibly valuable and building your listening skills through media is crucial, actual human interaction provides immediate, unpredictable feedback, exposes you to natural conversational turns you can't anticipate, and offers the vital motivation that comes from genuine human connection. Building your speaking network means actively looking for, seeking out, and intentionally creating opportunities to use English with others. Think of it like building a bridge. You can meticulously practice all you want with your tools and plans. You can even construct parts of the bridge, but to actually use the bridge and make it functional, you need to connect it to the other side, to real people. Let's look at the proactive journey of Chloe. Chloe was a vibrant fashion student from Vietnam, pursuing her studies in the bustling, diverse city of New York. She was incredibly eager to practice her English and develop her fluency, but she was naturally shy about approaching strangers. Her daily life mostly revolved around her close circle of Vietnamese friends, and her university classes were structured, offering limited opportunities for free, spontaneous conversation. She knew deep down that she desperately needed more organic speaking opportunities outside her immediate comfort zone. She really wanted to put herself out there. Chloe decided to actively and strategically build her English-speaking network. She loved painting and drawing, so she looked for local hobby groups and clubs related to art, like art workshops or informal drawing meetups. She found and joined a small casual drawing group that met once a week in a community center. She knew that by sharing a common interest, conversation would naturally be easier and less intimidating. At first, she mostly listened intently, absorbing the English around her. But gradually, she started commenting on others' artwork, asking simple questions about their techniques, and cautiously sharing her own ideas. Phrases like, "Your use of color's beautiful," "What kind of paint did you use for that effect?" or, I really like the way you captured the light there. How long did it take you? Started to flow more freely. Chloe also had a deep passion for animals, so she researched and found a local animal shelter that was looking for volunteers to walk dogs. This turned out to be a perfect fit because the conversations were often very low pressure, frequently about the dogs themselves, and involved simple instructions and observations. Examples included, "This dog's super energetic, isn't he? He loves to run," or "Do you think he needs more water? He's panting a lot." These short, functional interactions built her confidence. She also intentionally targeted local cafes and small shops, making it a point to go to the same small coffee shop every morning. She would always greet the barista, make comfortable eye contact, and gradually started adding a simple comment beyond just ordering, "Busy morning today, huh?" Or, "This coffee smells amazing. You guys always make it perfectly." She also practiced asking questions in local shops, even if she knew the answer, just to get speaking practice. "Where can I find the milk, please?" Or, "Do you have any sugar packets over here?" While she had tried language exchange apps and online groups before, this time she approached them with a clear, specific goal. Instead of just general, unstructured chat, she would suggest specific topics for conversation. "Let's talk about our weekend plans. What are you doing?" Or, "Let's describe our favorite foods and why we love them." This made the conversations more focused, less overwhelming, and more productive for her speaking practice. Chloe's consistent, proactive efforts began to yield remarkable results. She started making new friends from diverse cultural backgrounds, all communicating in English. Her confidence soared because her speaking practice wasn't just an abstract exercise. It was deeply connected to real-life experiences, shared interests, and genuine connections. She learned that by actively putting herself in situations where English was necessary, even in small, manageable doses, she exponentially increased her speaking opportunities and dramatically improved her fluency. She discovered that finding your people, even just one or two new connections, can transform your English learning from a solitary, sometimes isolated task into a vibrant, shared, and truly enriching journey. Here's a network-building challenge for you. Identify one area of your life where you could potentially create a new English-speaking opportunity. Could you join a local club or group that aligns with your hobbies? Could you find a new cafe or shop where you consistently practice a simple greeting and question? Could you commit to trying one language exchange session per week with a clear topic in mind, specifically focusing on speaking? Take that brave first step to actively expand your English-speaking network. Remember, even a 5-minute conversation is valuable practice. Finally, and crucially, learning to talk to anyone in English easily, naturally, and fluently is not a short dash. It is most definitely a marathon. There will be days, perhaps many of them, when you feel incredibly motivated, energized, and see rapid, exciting progress. The words will flow, conversations will feel easy, and you'll feel a surge of accomplishment. But there will also be days when you feel stuck, when progress seems to slow to a crawl, when you feel frustrated with your mistakes, or when you simply feel too tired, too overwhelmed, or too discouraged to practice. Sustaining your motivation throughout this long, often challenging journey is perhaps the most critical factor for ultimate, long-term success. It's about developing resilient habits and a supportive mindset that keep you going, pushing forward, even when the path feels difficult and the results aren't immediately obvious. Think of a gardener tending to a plant. They don't just plant a seed, water it once, and then walk away, expecting a flourishing garden. number. They water it consistently, perhaps every day or every few days, even when it looks small. They prune it when needed, removing dead leaves. They protect it from pests or harsh weather. And they celebrate each new leaf, each small bud, each beautiful flower that emerges. Your English fluency is exactly like that plant. It needs constant, gentle, patient nurturing and care to grow and blossom. Let's look at the proactive journey of Ahmed. Ahmed was a highly educated pharmacist from Syria who had recently resettled in London, a vibrant but demanding new environment. He was incredibly motivated to learn English quickly and effectively, not only for his professional career, but also to integrate fully into his new community and build a social life. In his early days, he would study English intensely for hours, trying to learn hundreds of new words in a single week, and then feel utterly exhausted, overwhelmed, and deeply frustrated when he couldn't remember everything perfectly or use it in conversation. This intense burst and burnout cycle was a common pattern for him. He desperately wanted to find a way to stay consistent with his English learning without getting bogged down. Ahmed decided to shift his focus to sustainable practice and celebrating small wins. Instead of trying to speak perfectly for a solid hour, which often led to frustration, he set very small, achievable, and therefore realistic goals for himself each day. These goals felt much less daunting and were far easier to stick to consistently. Today, I'll speak English for just 10 minutes. Or, today, I'll learn 5 new common phrases and actively try to use at least one in my thoughts. He ingeniously integrated English practice into his daily routine, so it became a natural habit rather than an extra burdensome chore. He started listening to English news podcasts during his daily commute on the bus. He practiced narrating his actions and thoughts in English while cooking dinner. He watched one English YouTube video related to his personal interests every evening, actively listening for new vocabulary and natural expressions. Crucially, instead of dwelling on his mistakes, he started actively tracking his progress. He kept a simple journal, or even just a note on his phone, where he'd quickly jot down one positive English interaction or learning moment he had each day, no matter how small it seemed. Examples included: spoke to the bus driver about the weather, understood a funny joke on a TV show, successfully asked a question at the pharmacy without hesitation. This small ritual helped him visualize his progress, no matter how incremental, and fundamentally shifted his focus from what he couldn't do to what he was doing successfully. When he achieved a weekly goal, perhaps using 5 new phrases in conversation or maintaining his 10-minute speaking challenge every day, he would give himself a small, enjoyable reward, like watching an episode of his favorite show guilt-free or enjoying a special treat from a local bakery. On tough days when motivation was low, he would use powerful why reminders. He would close his eyes and vividly picture himself having fluent, confident conversations with future colleagues, or confidently navigating the City of London without any language barriers. He'd tell himself, "Keep your eye on the prize." Ahmed's consistent, manageable approach led to steady, noticeable, and ultimately profound improvement in his English. He wasn't overwhelmed by the learning process anymore. His confidence grew organically with each small success and consistent effort. He learned a vital lesson. Fluency isn't about giant, impossible leaps. It's about 1,000 small, consistent, and well-managed steps forward. He discovered that by making English practice a sustainable, integrated, and even enjoyable part of his daily life, he could maintain his motivation over the long term and achieve his ambitious fluency goals. Here's a motivation-sustaining challenge for you, something you can start today. Set just one small, realistic English-speaking goal for yourself for tomorrow. Maybe it's to use one new phrase you learned today, or to talk to yourself in English for just 5 minutes during a routine activity. Achieve it, and then acknowledge your success, even if it's just a mental good job. Or if you keep a journal, write it down. By consistently celebrating these small victories, no matter how minor they seem, you build momentum, reinforce positive habits, and keep your motivation strong for the long run. We've covered so much ground today, a truly comprehensive journey into the heart of improving your English speaking fluency. From confronting and overcoming that initial paralyzing fear, to actively training your mind to think in English directly, bypassing the slow process of translation. We've explored how to master and use natural everyday phrases and idioms to make your English sound authentic, and how to perfect your pronunciation and intonation so your words carry the right music and emotion. We delved into the crucial skill of becoming an active listener and an engaged responder, understanding that communication is a two-way street. We looked at the power of becoming a compelling storyteller, sharing personal anecdotes to connect deeply. We even discussed the often overlooked but vital role of nonverbal communication, your body language, gestures, and facial expressions in conveying meaning and building rapport. We explored the importance of consistent practice in the real world, including mastering small talk and how to build your speaking network by creating opportunities to talk to anyone. And finally, we've understood the transformative power of self-correction and the essential strategies for sustaining your motivation throughout this incredible, rewarding journey. The journey to talking to anyone in English easily, naturally, and fluently is a deeply personal and unique one for each individual. There is no single magic bullet or an overnight trick that will suddenly make you fluent. It is undeniably a continuous process of learning, of trying new things, of making mistakes, and of bravely trying again. But what I want you to truly take away from today's incredibly detailed episode is this profound truth. You already possess everything you need within you to succeed. You have the remarkable human ability to learn, the inherent desire to connect with others, and the profound bravery to try, even when it feels uncertain. Remember this always: fluency is not, repeat not, about being perfect. It's about being effective. It's about successful communication, not flawless grammar. It's about building genuine human connection, not just strict linguistic correctness. Your unique accent, your occasional pauses, your charming minor mistakes, your personal way of expressing yourself, these are all integral parts of what makes your English your English. They add to the rich, diverse, and beautiful tapestry of global communication. Never, ever hide them. Instead, embrace them as part of your authentic, powerful voice. Think back to all the amazing people you've met through these real-life stories today. Akira, who overcame his fear by starting with just 3 simple sentences. Maria, who brilliantly trained her brain to think directly in English by narrating her daily actions. Chen, who became a dedicated phrase hunter to sound more natural and conversational. Sarah, who diligently used the shadowing technique to master the music of English and improve her intonation. Miguel, who transformed his conversations by becoming a truly active, empathetic listener. Aisha, who ingeniously created her own consistent daily speaking practice without needing a partner. Kenji, who courageously learned to embrace and learn from his mistakes, turning them into stepping stones. Isabel, who actively and strategically expanded her vocabulary and diversified her sentence structures to express complex ideas. Omar, who harnessed the power of micro-storytelling to make his conversations more engaging and personal. Chica, who discovered the immense power of nonverbal communication to enhance her spoken English. Javier, who bravely engaged in small talk, recognizing it as a crucial gateway to building connections. And Ahmed, who wisely sustained his motivation through setting realistic goals and consistently celebrating his small incremental wins. These are all real people, with real struggles, who found real, practical, and often innovative ways to achieve their goal of speaking English easily, naturally, and fluently. Their diverse experiences vividly show us that with dedication, the right strategies, and a consistent willingness to step out of our comfort zones, truly anything is possible. So, my dear English learners, as we conclude this incredibly in-depth episode, this deep dive into the art and science of speaking English, I want to leave you with one final, incredibly powerful and profoundly encouraging message. Your voice in English is unique, valuable, and a gift that the world is eagerly waiting to hear. Don't hold back. Let it out. Start small, just like Akira. Be brave in your attempts, not perfect in your delivery. Embrace the entire journey with all its ups and downs, and celebrate every single step forward along the way, no matter how small it feels. Because with every word you bravely say, with every conversation you confidently enter, you are not just speaking a language. You are building bridges between cultures. You are opening new doors to opportunities. And you are actively shaping a more connected, more understanding, and more vibrant future for yourself and for the world around you. Thank you so very much for joining me today on Best English Podcast. I truly, deeply hope this incredibly detailed episode has given you the courage, the inspiration, and the many practical tools you need to unlock your full English speaking power. If you found this episode helpful, insightful, and enjoyable, and I truly hope you did, please do me a huge favor and like this podcast episode or video. Your likes genuinely help our podcast reach more amazing learners just like you, spreading these valuable insights. Also, please comment below with one specific strategy you're going to try this week, or a small speaking success you've recently had. I absolutely love reading your stories, and they often inspire future episodes and topics for us. And, of course, please subscribe to the Best English Podcast so you don't miss any of our daily tips, our engaging lessons, and our inspiring real-life stories designed specifically to help you improve your English skills. Your support truly helps us grow and continue creating valuable content for the Best English Podcast community. Keep listening, keep learning, and most importantly, keep talking. Because your voice in English is a beautiful, powerful thing that the world is waiting to hear and connect with. Until next time, happy speaking.